As I was saying earlier on in the show, I mean, for the past 10 years, it's pretty much been a case of steady as she goes when it comes to budget. The ministry has really, taken on this purposeful approach to providing certainty to South Africans, to foreigners as well. What are your broad expectations for today?
Well, I think it's good if one thinks over a 10-year time frame to think of all the technical changes that have filtered through, which have been quite fundamental. I think if we would take ourselves back 10 years, our tax system looked quite different technically to how it does now. This year, your previous speaker indicated that he didn't expect big tax news, and I agree with that in the sense of technical changes. I don't think we'll see lots of those. But the big news that we will be keeping an eye out for is tax collections. And sadly, this year, tax collections are significantly down on estimate. At the time of the interim budget, the figure was 70 billion. And that has a big impact on the budgeted or the anticipated deficit.
Of course, with all the plans that are underway, I mean, we've got priorities explicitly spelled out. There's a focus on education, job creation, healthcare, service delivery, infrastructure development as well. And with that, the question is, where is the money coming from? I mean, you emphasize a tax collection here, but everyone is getting very nervous despite whatever analysts and economists have been saying thus far. As far as personal tax is concerned, what are you anticipating there?
I think that in order for there to be a meaningful difference with tax collections by putting rates up, there's only really one rate that is feasible, and that would be the individual, particularly the marginal rate. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, and I don't think it will necessarily happen right now. But for various reasons, the individual tax is the most reliable contributor to the coffers. Individuals generally, if they're in employment, can't go into tax loss positions, as your previous speaker alluded to. VAT, of course, is another big contributor, but VAT is a politically sensitive tax because it's partly a tax on the poor. So I'm hoping and I believe that we won't see tax rate increases, but if we were to see one, I believe it would be on the individual marginal rate of 40%.
Let's take a look then at on the company front. I mean, we can't afford at this stage not to be competitive, globally competitive, that is, and attracting investment our way. What do you see unfolding there?
Yes, I think what you say is quite right. I mean, the cut from 29 to 28%, the government said explicitly that that was in order to keep us internationally competitive. We still have STC hanging around for the time being, and I think it's probably going to hang around for a bit longer because there'll be some loss of revenue once that goes for various reasons. STC makes us somewhat less competitive than we should be, and I think that's why, from a policy point of view, it's intended that it should go. We know what the new dividend tax will look like, but we don't know yet when it's going to come in. So yes, there are already some factors. I mean, the 28% rate is not that low by world standards. And I would agree with you that we really can't afford to go higher. We certainly can't afford to go lower in this environment.
Do you think that South Africa failed to use its muscle in the past to cut taxes? I mean, you know, where many see this as a time where tools like tax breaks are needed to actually help grow the economy.
I think tax rates are a moving target, and if we had cut tax, I mean, tax rates were cut in the past, particularly for individuals, by the adjustments to the brackets. They were cut for companies with the rate coming down from 29 to 28. STC came down from 12.5 to 10. So in fairness, I think we did see tax cuts. I think it's also worth noting that although under the ANC we've seen some new forms of tax like CGT, we've never seen a tax rate go up. And that's the other key thing that would make quite a big psychological difference if anything went up in this budget. Yeah,
or where things could go up, though, and that's almost a given, sin taxes. We're looking, surely that's some kind of ramp up is being expected on that front?
Possibly. I mean, they'll certainly go up to keep up with inflation. They could possibly go up by a bit more than that. The problem is that they don't really contribute a huge amount to the overall tax take. Most of the tax money comes from corporate income tax, individual income tax, and VAT. So they're not going to add a lot of money to the overall tax take.
Well, as Kevin was highlighting a little earlier on in the show, and also the insert emphasized, job creation is the focus. I mean, dispensation for companies operating in strategic sectors of the economy comes into the spotlight. Do you see there being, the use of tax breaks to actually upskill local talent, where if companies get given that tax break, they can then use that towards developing skills?
Yes, I think that would make a lot of sense. I think thinking what considering what the tax system could do to facilitate employment. Of course, there are lots of other things that have to happen to create an employer-friendly environment. I think just the other thing that we need to be focusing on, and it's a slightly more long-term thing, is savings. Trying to encourage a savings culture. I think it's equally important as creating employment, because one of our problems is that South Africans are very poor savers.
Yep.
We've already addressed the issue of spending to some extent with limiting what people can borrow, and the next thing is to actually encourage people to save, and the tax system can do quite a lot there.